It's my pleasure to introduce to Shirley Miller, our very own Shirley Miller tonight, a wife, a mother, now grands two, a working woman, married 64 years to Zell, who had a 45-year political career, proud to have served 4 years on President Carter's Committee on Mental Retardation and President George Bush's Committee on Presidential Scholars. And during Zell's governor's year, she worked on the literacy of the state and saw more services made available. With Zell's career, she has been lots of places, but here in Towns County has been home to her since she was 16. And now, memories of living and working in Towns County with Shirley Miller.
Mr. Commissioner, it's a pleasure to be with all of you here tonight. And I think I have not turned on my mic yet. So, a minute.
There you go. Try that.
Okay, thank you. It's working. I can tell it's working. Well, tonight I have been charged with talking about working in Towns County. So I'll get to that. And I did come to Young Harris in the summertime that I turned 16 years old. I loved the place then, and I love this place now. I don't really like to talk about myself. I find other people a lot more interesting than me. And so this is not something that I do very often. But I will tell you about my jobs and the fact that my working life in Towns County happened here in Hiwassee. We after I graduated from Young Harris College, married my Marine Zell, and we went to Camp Lejeune, back to UGA in Athens, and came home for him to teach at the college and coach in 1959. And we had not unpacked. And in those days, there was housing for Young Harris College faculty. And we lived in a house across from the post office that belonged to the college for a while. But before we were unpacked from coming home from Athens, the county school superintendent, who was Mr. Ray Nicholson, called me. The secretary to the board had to have an emergency surgery. I had, he kind of knew me. His son Lanier, who many of you know as Dr. Lanier Nicholson, had been my classmate at Young Harris. And so I went to work for the Towns County Board of Education. And back in those days, we had 4 schools. And we were located in an office in the old courthouse, but made lots and lots of runs to all 4 of the schools. Young Harris, Macedonia, downtown, Hiwassee, and the high school. And so I got to know the county pretty well. The visiting teacher, who was Miss Marywell Phillips, and she was out every day finding out why this student or that student was at school. And so I learned where this creek is and that creek is, and where this family lived and where the others, somebody else lived from her. And of course I did the bookkeeping and wrote the teachers' salaries and that, and then, of course, back in, that would have been 1959, 60, the county didn't have very much money. And so if a teacher needed to go home during the school day for some reason or other, it was either Mr. Ray or me. And I still have memories of going to the high school, especially things like typing classes, and trying to get through the rest of the day with the kids, because I really wasn't that much older than they were. And so it was quite an experience, and I loved it. And when Mr. Nicholson was no longer in office, so his job was gone, my job was gone. And so Zell had been sent by the Marine Corps to journalism school at Great Lakes, Illinois. And so it had been birthed within him, the desire for a newspaper. So we bought the Towns County Herald, and that was my next. And so promptly he gets, who knows about journalism, gets elected to the General Assembly and goes off. And so I had a little office off the square, sort of where Raymond James is located, the Anderson building, a little building there that I shared with Klein McClure, who was a watchmaker and a watch person, repair person. And then we had a space in the back that we shared. And so every morning I went to Hiawassee to work on the paper, took Matt, who was not old enough to go to school yet, and our dog, so it was really an interesting learning experience for me, because I've always been able to count, but a writer I am not. And but I gave it my all. But we progressed to the point where we had the equipment to be able to get the paper camera ready. And it was printed then down in McCaysville. So every week, one night, I stayed up all night with the paper. Taking it to McCaysville, getting it printed, bringing it back home, putting the labels on them, taking them to the post office. And so that was pretty stressful with Zell gone. But then it sort of became apparent to me and to Zell that a political family ought not to be in the newspaper business, even on a county level. So we made the decision not to keep it. After what triggered it, I had a call. I had been up all night long, and I had a call, and this person said, took me to task about something that I had written in the paper, and said to me, "That's not, it's the people's paper, it's not your paper." And I thought, I didn't say anything. And I sure did want to. I said, I stayed up all night with this paper. And so it does belong to me, but I didn't. And so we didn't keep it. And I think that was the right decision at that time. So y'all going to be starting to think right now, that girl can't keep a job. But before the paper, Elois at the Bank of Hiawassee had talked to me about coming to work for her after the Board of Education. And so I went to see her and asked her if she was still interested in me. And she said, yes. And so I went to work at the Bank of Hiawassee, and I loved it, and I loved it. But as much as I was liking what I was doing, and being at home in Young Harris, by 1967, our boys were getting close to high school age, with a daddy that was not here much. And so we made a decision that they needed a daddy 7 days a week. And so we all went to Atlanta. And I worked for a bank there for 8 years. In 1974, Zell was elected lieutenant governor and was in office only weeks before his mama became sick. So I was the one. I had to be here a lot to take care of her. And as I was doing that, I sort of got a idea in my head, I guess a bee in my bonnet, that I could open a dress shop and still take care of her. And so I rented a little space in the back of the antique mall and opened a woman's clothing store, and had some really good ladies who looked after it, and it didn't interfere with what I needed to do for Bertie. And so I decided, it'd be nice to have another place. So I opened one in Norcross, and bought a building in the historic district. And going through that was a good learning experience for me. And then I did one on the Buford Highway. But by the early 1981, Bertie's care at home had reached the point that it couldn't go on. And so she was here in the nursing home in Hiawassee for the next 5 years. And so I went every day, sometimes twice, sometimes 3 times, because, they can always use an extra pair of hands, especially at mealtime. But as all of this was going on, it was becoming apparent to me that there was going to be another bank in Towns County. And so I started thinking about it. And luckily I had been, during my time in Atlanta, I had worked in 2 startups, 2 new banks in the city. And so I started thinking about it, and I thought that it needed to be locally owned. I didn't think it needed to be a depository for Towns County money to be loaned in some other area. So, when you're young and idealistic and you think you can do anything and you have energy, so I set about finding out what I needed to do, and to stay away from Zell's political world. It needed to be a member of the Federal Reserve as opposed to a state chartered bank, which made it a little bit more difficult. And I thought Beverly Messer was going to be here with me tonight, because she was with me the whole way, and something happened in her neighborhood, and so she's having to see about one of her neighbors who had to be taken to the hospital. But, so in, about 1980, I rented a little building down sort of close to the Mexican restaurant here in town. And Beverly and I set out to sell the stock. And of course we had a building to build. And I could talk about it forever. And I have a few pictures I'll show you. It was a horse pasture where United Community Bank is today. And so Beverly did all the book work, and she had worked at banks around the country as her husband had been transferred from job to job. And so I did I drew out the different pieces of the building. Of course, we had to, buy the land. And by that time, my oldest, Murphy, who is not here, was practicing law. So I dispatched Murphy to the TVA to see what we needed to do with this very low from the road horse pasture to be able to put a building on it. And like everything else that you build around here, there was a lot of dirt to be moved. And so I did that part of it. And so it finally reached a point where I had a used window shade. And I took my different rooms and pieces of the bank that I had made and pasted them on this window shade and went to see an architect to make a blueprint. And neither Beverly nor I had worked anywhere that was not online for a while. And so that's all we knew how to do. So that, so it was the first, we got a lot of thumbs ups for having an ATM, but that's what we knew. And it was run on some dedicated phone lines. So it was a live bank, a lot of used equipment. I found used, because a lot of banks, of course, would change over, that would have a lot of money, that would change over to new equipment every time it came out. So there was a lot of it on the market. So I just kept finding pieces of used equipment that didn't cost a lot. And so it made sense for us to do our work in-house. So we didn't have to send our work away. And which I think Tina's back there. She was with me from the beginning. And Beverly was better at training folks than I was. Because she's got a lot more patience than I do. And I practically lived in that building, and until Zell was elected governor, and I was actually still there just hours before he was to be sworn in, and so training people to take our places, because Beverly went with us to Atlanta. And so I was, by that time I was getting calls about, folks trying to move our from an apartment downtown out to the governor's residence. And so all I would say is, don't lose my dress and don't lose their suit. And I'll sort the rest of it out when I get there. So all of my working life here was here in this town. And I think at this point that I talked enough about me. And I'd like to hear from you. And so let's do some Q&A until they tell me that my time is over. Yes.
Not long ago,
Who
you
will?
were telling about how you met Zell the first day from the cow. You didn't tell us that.
I'm sorry.
You didn't tell us how you met Zell in your first day when Daddy told you to feed the cows.
Willie knows too much about me. Well, by the time I came to Young Harris, Zell had already finished. And back in those days, Dr. K is here, and back in those days, dating on campus was just not something that happened at Young Harris College. But I was home over in Andrews between my first year and my second year at Young Harris in the summertime. And many of you probably know Dave Bristol. He tells this story that at a baseball game in downtown Andrews, that Zell said, "Who is that dark-haired girl in the blue pickup?" And so most of our dating happened when I was at home over in Andrews, and then not long afterwards he joined the Marine Corps. Oh, you had to tell that one, didn't you? But Malene wanted to know about our first day, and so we have I grew up on a little hillside farm with some brood cows and a bunch of chickens. And so our first date, I told Zell that he would have to ask my mama or my daddy. And so he showed up about middle of the day on a Saturday, and my daddy was at home, and he said, okay, you can take her to a square dance in Blue Ridge. And then he said, but sister, today is our day to put the cowlicks out over where our cows were in the summertime, because around Nantahala Lake, and we natives call it Chogi and Little Chogi, you could take your cows and their babies as soon as it was warm enough, and it was open range. And so and some people in Clay County, especially the Tusquity area, who had cattle, they took their cows too. And so there was a schedule about whenever you were supposed to put out the salt licks. So I take so here we have an old rattled farm truck with tandem wheels, full of cowlicks in the back, and a mallet to knock what was left from the old ones off. And so Zell, my little brother, and I went. And I don't think that Zell had ever seen a cowlick in his life. And so we went to the lake, and we counted calves, we counted cows. We knocked off what was left over of the old cowlicks with the mallet, put the new ones on. They weigh about 60 pounds. And so we did go to the, after we got back home, I got dressed and we went to a square dance, and I thought, I will never see him again. But I did. I did. He kept coming back. I guess, we had, probably filed the, an application for a radio station license about the same time we had the newspaper. And it was granted in, the early 1980s. And so, that's a Matt project, that's not a Shirley project. Matt, the radio station, it's Matt's responsibility. Matt built the radio station and got it up and going. Thank you, Leanne. Dr. Kay?
Well, Shirley, when you all moved back permanently to Young Harris, you had the house that Bertie had really had a lot to do with, of course.
Uh-huh.
But you also then made some improvements there, right? As well. And, so tell us a little bit about that.
So we've been in the Rock House about 64 years. When, best about the time that I was working at the Bank of Hiawassee, we've been able to save enough money to have a down payment on a house. And I had picked out a house over right sort of by where Johnny Acree's garage was. It had been built by a doctor who came here from California to work out his student loan debt, and he had finished. And it was a California built house down on that little cove of the lake, and I liked it a lot. It had tile floors all in it and all that. So I took Zell's mama to look at it. And the next morning before breakfast, she was at our house on the campus at Young Harris and said, "You don't really want to leave Young Harris, do you?" To Zell and me. And we said, "No, we don't, but we need to get our boys off the campus." By then, they were old enough to have the run of the campus. And so she said, "If you will build me a house that I can leave to Jane, Zell's older sister, then you can have the Rock House." And so we built the house next door. And so we've been in the Rock House for 64 years. And we've never have changed the front of it from the way that Bertie built it. So from what's facing the road, that part of it, the original rock part, has never been changed. But we've added on to the back of it, and it's had all different kinds of reincarnations. It's been a 5-bedroom. Now it's a 3-bedroom. It's been this and it's been that. The kitchen's been in one place. It's been in another place. But I've been there for 64 years.
Is that the one where you actually picked up the stone?
Zell's mama did. Zell's dad, mama and daddy were teachers at Young Harris. And whenever he was born, they were living in a college that belonged to a house that belonged to the college. And so 13 days after his birth, his daddy died, and at 40 years old. And so Bertie had come to Young Harris to teach art. And but her favorite medium was cement. all of her life. So Bertie picked up the rocks for the house out of the creek, up above Cupid's Falls, on the Nichols on Miss Kelly Nichols's property. Miss Nichols had babysat Jane when Bertie was teaching, and so would put the rocks on the bank, and then the men that worked at the college farm would bring a sled on the weekend and bring them down to the spot where the house is. And it's in this day and time with people moving around like they do and everything. Lots of you probably know Dr. John Calley, who lives next door to me. Well, his grandparents living where he lives now, and Mr. and Miss Corn actually sold Bertie the lot to build a house on. And so that same family has been our neighbors for now 93 years. Bertie didn't want the rock split, so every wall is as thick as whatever the rock was. So, yeah, she was quite an amazing woman, and very, very civic minded. She was on the down here at City Council. I'm not sure how many years, but she was mayor at one time. She was the first woman ever on a Travis or a grand jury in this county. Back, I think, in the maybe 40s or 50s. Anybody else? Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. Thank you. I miss him too. I miss him every day. So his materials were a paper and a pen.
And you.
And so Zell knew what a hammer was, but I don't know that he ever used it. He didn't have much of that kind of event. Yes.
When Zell was elected a senator and went to Washington D.C., did you go with him
Yes.
and live there?
That was Governor Barnes when Senator Coverdale passed away. The next morning when I got down to the kitchen, Governor Barnes was sitting on the porch and to talk about Zell going to Washington. And so before, after he left, he would think about it, and then before we left, Zell said, if I say yes, you gotta go. And I said, okay. And so it was interesting, after being in state politics all of those years, Washington is a different place. It is a different place. It was, for us, fortunate that there were 7 men from both parties who had been governors or lieutenant governors or both at the same time that were in the Senate. And so they were their own little block and talked constantly about how you can't get anything done there. That's very, very true. It's hard. The work in Washington for the votes, the heavy lifting starts about 4 o'clock in the afternoon. And so Zell being the sort of the workaholic that he always was, the staff were on 2 shifts. There were the ones who came in about 6:30 in the morning and turned on the lights, and we lived across the street. He could see when the lights came on in the office. And so he would go get the papers first thing in the morning. So some came in about 6:30, and then they went home early afternoon if they could. And then some others came, and then they stayed until he went home at night, which was what, 10, 11 o'clock. And it's a grueling workload. And I think it was apparent to Zell that too many people stay too long, that they stay until they're too old to do the work. And he became more and more convinced of that after 9/11, because after 9/11, of course, the workload increased dramatically. So we were there 9/11.
Any more questions?
Yes,
Getting back to the Towns County Herald,
yes, ma'am. Yes, sir.
when you and Zell had it, I was a long way from Hiawassee. You had changed the format of the paper. It was not a full page.
No, it was a,
Little
yeah, you
small.
call it a tabloid, tabloid newspaper.
I happened to be in Tripoli, Libya. And Charles and my dad, would mail me that paper. And you don't know how much it meant to get that paper over there in Libya while I was in the Air Force. I have a copy of one issue where I wrote a letter to you, complimenting you on the new format and on the paper. I should have brought it with me tonight, but I didn't do it.
Oh, well, thank you for those kind words. I guess somebody told me at that time, write what you know. And so that's what I did as far as, I wrote what I knew. I told folks how to make blackberry jam. I told folks what to look for if they needed to get the vet, if a cow was about to have a calf. So I wrote what I knew.
One thing that you did have in there was the deaths in the county. And I kind of wondered if there would be anybody left that I knew when I got back.
I think, and you know, I do that to this day. Whenever I get the Towns County Herald, that's the first page I go to. And when I get the Union County paper, that's the first page I go to, is to the obituaries. It's important in the community to do a good job with having the obituaries. Willie, I see you.
You say Zell done the thing, but you were his backbone. We were young little kids in school, and you would take pages to be capped up. You'd come by and give us before daylight and take us up around at the bare page, yeah, and we made $4 that. You did this in the movie. I mean, you were the backbone. You were coming, you were heading down Skelly.
Well, you were kind. And her daddy was, Paul Dyer was one of the school board members whenever I worked for the Board of Education. And when I needed his signature, I had no idea where I was gonna find him. But he was always planting trees. And if he were to come by the courthouse, he would have trees in the back of his truck. But Mr. Paul really believed in planting trees. And of course, he also believed that you could grow trout commercially. And so So that's so her daddy started the Hiawassee trout that we all enjoy these days.
Mrs. Miller,
Yeah.
being politics is conservative and liberal like today, what position do you think Zell Miller would take today?
I think that probably he would be like you know, a middle of the roader. And can hold his, and especially after going to Washington, not so much in Atlanta, because, during, most of his political career in Atlanta, it was before, it was when the state was still, predominantly Democratic, so, but he had during his lieutenant governor days, most of the people in the legislature who were Republican had been folks that, because he worked for 3 governors in a row, so he knew them, and they knew him. And, but then, of course, after he was in Washington, he kept his thoughts pretty close to the vest. He didn't make a decision until it was something that he was happy with. So he was a middle of the roader, and I think he would still be a middle of the roader now today. And whether a middle of the roader can get elected in this climate, who knows? Not me.
Any more questions? Okay, well, Ms. Shirley, thank you.